I never thought it would be my own blood who'd cast me out like a stranger. Hey lovelies. Before we dive into today's powerful story, can you take just a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a moment. Share it with someone today. And now let's get back into the story. It happened on a suffocatingly quiet evening during dinner, in a house that once held my childhood laughter. My fork hovered untouched as my mother's voice sliced the air like glass. "You're no longer part of this family," she said. "Come, hold, final." The words crashed into me, louder than any scream. My father's face remained still, unreadable. My brother? He smirked like he'd been waiting for this moment. Chairs scraped the hardwood. They stood. My mother gestured to the front door like I was trash to be taken out. I don't remember standing. I don't remember grabbing my coat. I remember the weight of their stares, the silence of the room swallowing me whole. Outside the night was bitter. The lock clicked behind me, an unmistakable sound that told me I wasn't welcome anymore. I turned, pounded on the door, shouted names. Nothing. My key didn't work. I held it in my hand, its teeth now useless. In the same breath I lost my home, my safety, my identity. No fight. No explanation. Just exile. And they didn't even blink. I didn't cry that night. Not right away. I walked with no destination, the cold biting through my jacket, my breath fogging in front of me. My legs moved on instinct, my thoughts spinning in wild, looping circles. I kept replaying their faces. My mother's stiff expression, my father's silence, my brother's smug satisfaction. What had I done that was so unforgivable? A cheap motel with flickering neon lights eventually took me in. I paid for a room with shaky hands, clutching the plastic key card like it was the last thing tethering me to the world. Inside, the walls were stained with mildew and regret. I sat on the edge of the bed, heart pounding, ears ringing, waiting for the panic to settle. It didn't. I stared at the ceiling for hours, mind racing. Was it because I'd refused to work for the family business? Because I wanted something different? Something that actually meant something to me? Writing wasn't a fantasy. It was all I had. But to them it was nothing. Then a week later, just as the numbness began to harden into anger, my phone buzzed with an email. Subject: urgent, call immediately. It was from their lawyer. The email was short. Clinical. There's a situation that requires your attention. Please call as soon as possible. J. Eddings, legal counsel. I stared at the screen, disbelieving. A week ago they'd cast me out like a stray dog. Now they wanted me to help? I let out a laugh. Sharp, hollow, humorless. They hadn't even offered a reason that night. No explanations. Just exile. And now, through a lawyer of all people, they were reaching back across the severed line, pretending it hadn't snapped in the first place? I didn't call. Not at first. Instead, I opened my laptop and began typing. Have you ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you? The words spilled onto the screen like blood from an open wound. Growing up, our last name meant something in that town. The Whitlocks were known for their empire of flawless celebrations. Weddings, fundraisers, corporate galas. My mother ran the show with the precision of a general. My father kept the numbers straight. My brother, the heir apparent, soaked in the praise like it was owed to him. Me. I was the outlier. The one who dreamed in dialogue and scene headings. Maybe they never forgave me for that. The Whitlock house was never quiet. Even dinners felt like board meetings. Talk of client lists, venue issues, floral arrangements, margins. My mother, Evelyn, orchestrated every moment like a symphony of power, her voice firm, always one breath away from snapping. My father, Thomas, nodded his way through life, deferring to her every command. He didn't need to speak. His silence was its own language. And then there was Owen. 5 years older. The chosen one. He learned to charm clients before he could drive, mimicked mom's commands with ease, thrived under the constant pressure. He called him a prodigy. Owen was born for this, she liked to say. Me. I was the mistake they kept trying to correct. They said I lacked focus, that I was selfish, that my little writing hobby would leave me penniless and alone. Maybe they were right. But I couldn't stop. I wrote on napkins in the margins of my textbooks, on the back of place cards at their lavish events. Stories were the only way I could breathe. Still, their words cut deeper than they knew. You need a real job. This is your last chance to fall in line. You'll thank us one day. I never did. There was one person who never asked me to change. My grandmother, Emery Whitlock. She lived just outside town in a modest cottage with ivy climbing the brick and a crooked weather vane creaking in the wind. Her home smelled like old paper and cinnamon tea, warm, comforting like safety. Every weekend I'd escape there. She'd be waiting on the porch, her hands gnarled with age but strong as ever, a knowing smile on her face. I never had to say a word. She saw me. He always had. Your stories matter, Emery, she'd whisper, her voice soft but fierce. Even if no one else sees them yet. We'd sit for hours with old film scripts spread across her kitchen table, analyzing lines, unraveling arcs, tearing apart scenes to rebuild them stronger. She'd write in the margins of my work, gentle, guiding notes in looping cursive. This line sings, "What is your character really afraid of here? Don't hold back." When the rest of my family rolled their eyes at my dreams, she fed them. She passed 2 years ago. I hadn't been able to write for months after. The silence she left behind was louder than their voices had ever been. The day we buried Grandma Miriam, the sky was the color of bruises, deep purple clouds heavy with unspoken things. I stood beside her grave while my family murmured condolences that sounded more like rehearsed lines. Owen looked bored. My mother adjusted her black coat like she was attending a client's funeral, not her own mother's. I didn't cry until I was alone. In the weeks after, the pressure returned, stronger than ever. Evelyn barely waited a month before handing me a manila folder filled with marketing reports and venue rosters. "Time to get serious, Emery," she said, pushing the folder into my chest like a burden I was expected to carry. I forced myself to attend meetings, to take notes, to pretend. But my scripts kept calling to me, clawing at the inside of my chest until I couldn't breathe. I would sneak off to write in coffee shops, sometimes in the back room of Miriam's cottage, now locked and dusty. But they could always sense when I was slipping. "You're wasting time," Owen snapped one night, arms folded as he leaned against my bedroom doorway. "You failed once already. Don't embarrass yourself again." I didn't answer. But inside I was already writing my escape. A year ago I took my first real shot. I pitched a script to a small studio 2 towns over. A slow-burn drama about a girl who no longer fit the skin her family kept trying to wrap her in. It wasn't perfect, but it was raw and honest, the kind of story Miriam would have clapped for. They passed. The rejection email was polite. Professional. Not a fit for our current slate. But I saw through the formality. They didn't believe in it. They didn't believe in me. At dinner that night, Owen brought it up in front of everyone. "So how's that career going?" he asked, swirling wine in his glass like he was at a goddamn gala. "Any red carpet invitations yet?" My mother didn't say a word. He didn't have to. Her silence was heavy enough to fill the room. My father glanced at me briefly, then looked back down at his plate, chewing slowly, like the tension didn't exist. That night, I locked myself in my room and stared at the blinking cursor on my screen. I couldn't write a single word. The only thing that kept me from falling apart was a note tucked in an old journal from Miriam. "Keep going even when they laugh." Miriam had left me one thing. An old typewriter, its paint chipped, its keys stubborn but still alive with memory. I kept it near the window in my childhood room where the sunlight hit just right in the mornings. Some nights, when the pressure became unbearable, I'd run my fingers across the keys, not typing, just remembering her voice. "A good story doesn't whisper, Emery. It roars. Let it." But I couldn't roar. Not here. Mom had started barging into my room uninvited, dropping company files on my desk like they were holy scripture. "Read these. You'll learn something useful," she said, her tone sharp, her heels already clicking down the hallway before I could protest. Owen's visits were worse. He didn't come to talk. He came to gloat. "Still playing writer?" he'd ask, his grin wide, unkind. "At some point you'll realize it's just make-believe." Dad never interfered. Never defended. He was always sipping coffee, his gaze stuck to the table like he was afraid of what he'd see if he looked up. I tried to write late into the night. But their voices leaked through the walls. Their doubts wrapped around me like chains. The only thing louder than their disapproval was my own fear. Each morning felt like a fresh performance. I'd wake early, plaster on a smile, sit in meetings about themed galas and custom linens. Evelyn introduced me to clients as the creative arm of Whitlock and Company, though she never once asked me for an idea. Owen did most of the talking, he always did. I just nodded, jotted notes, and kept my real work hidden deep inside a spiral notebook I never let out of my sight. At night, I'd escape into my scripts, writing characters who fought back, who fled, who refused to be molded. I lived through them. I survived through them. But my deadlines for the company started slipping. "You're not pulling your weight," Evelyn snapped one morning, slamming a folder onto the kitchen counter. "We all have to sacrifice." Owen added with a shrug, "Maybe if you focused, you'd be worth something around here." The heat rose in my chest, but I swallowed it down. Rage wasn't allowed. Only obedience. I called a friend in the industry that night, someone I'd worked with briefly at a short-lived studio. "Anything coming up?" I asked, voice low. "Nothing yet," they said. "Sorry, Em." Another door closed. And still I kept writing. That night I stared at my screen for hours, stuck on one scene. It was simple. A woman standing across the dinner table from her family, finally saying the words she'd swallowed for years. In the scene she was brave. Steady. She said no. She walked away. I kept rewriting her lines, trying to believe I could one day speak them myself. But real life wasn't a script. In real life, fear clings like wet wool. You think of rent. Of silence. Of the way your father looks at you without looking. Of your brother's smug face and your mother's voice that never rises but always cuts. So I typed the words. "I'm not yours to control." The next day, Evelyn called another family dinner. I knew the routine. Roast chicken, wine, Owen picked, linen napkins folded just so. But something in the air was different, like a fuse waiting to burn out. As we sat, forks barely clinking, Evelyn finally spoke. "Emery, we need to talk about your future." My stomach turned to stone. I knew what was coming. But I also knew what I had written the night before. For the first time in a long time I felt ready. I met Evelyn's eyes across the table. Hers were sharp, unwavering, a queen issuing her final warning. "You've had your fun," she said. "It's time to get serious. You're either with us or you're wasting your life." Owen leaned back in his chair, swirling his wine like he always did when he was about to enjoy something cruel. "We gave you a chance," he said, smirking. "You chose rejection letters over stability." I clenched my fists beneath the table, grounding myself in the memory of Miriam's voice. "You are stronger than their doubts." "I'm not giving up on screenwriting," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "It's what I love." Evelyn's lips twitched, almost a sneer. "Love doesn't pay bills." I didn't flinch. "Neither does living someone else's life." Owen laughed, sharp and mean. "You're not good enough, Emery. Let's stop pretending." That's when my father finally spoke, his voice quiet but final. "Enough, Em. You're embarrassing yourself." It felt like being slapped. I turned to him, desperate. "You've seen me working. Writing. Trying. Why won't you support me?" He looked away. And that's when I realized. He never had. I stood, the chair legs scraping against the polished floor. My heart thudded in my chest, but I refused to let them see me shake. "You're choosing this over your own daughter?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Over her dream?" Evelyn rose too, her face stone. "This is your home only if you're part of this family. And being part of this family means contributing to what we've built." Owen crossed his arms, smug as ever. "Guess that means you're out." I looked to my father one last time. Nothing. Not even a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Just silence. And that hurt more than any word they'd said. I grabbed my bag, blinking back the sting behind my eyes. "You can't mean this," I whispered. Evelyn pointed to the door. That was it. I stepped outside. The cold bit into my skin like teeth. I turned back as the door slammed shut behind me. The sound of the lock turning was louder than any scream. I pounded on the door. "Mom. Dad. Don't do this." My voice cracked. No answer. I reached for my key. It didn't fit. They had changed the locks. Just like that, I was gone. I didn't sleep that night. The motel room smelled like bleach and stale smoke. The sheets were thin, the walls thinner. Every sound from the hallway bled through, laughter, footsteps, arguments. It all felt a million miles away. I lay on the mattress fully clothed, my bag at my side as if I might have to run again. At some point I checked my bank app, hoping I had enough for at least a few nights. But something was off. My emergency savings, the account I'd shared with Owen back when we were teenagers meant for family crises, was empty. $1,000 gone. I froze. Fingers shaking, I called the bank. After a long wait, a tired voice confirmed what I already knew. Yes, the withdrawal was processed yesterday. The authorization came from Emery Whitlock. My breath caught. I wanted to scream, but the sound wouldn't come. Owen hadn't just watched me get thrown out, he'd stolen from me on the way down. I called him. Straight to voicemail. Why? I whispered into the silence. That was mine, Owen. No reply. Just more silence. That night I opened my laptop and stared at a blank screen. The cursor blinked, waiting. Writing was all I had left. Days blurred together. I lived out of a suitcase holed up in that motel with thin towels and flickering lights. My meals came from vending machines. My life had been packed into a corner of a dingy room and no one, not one of them, had called. Not Evelyn. Not Owen. Not my father. I wanted to believe it was all some twisted test. That they'd come to their senses, show up at the door, apologize. But they didn't. And then came the email. Subject line: Trust notification, Florence Miriam Whitlock. From Robert Kane, Trust Attorney. At first I didn't open it. Her name alone brought a rush of heat to my eyes. I wasn't ready to grieve her all over again. But eventually curiosity, and a strange sense of dread, won out. I clicked. Inside was a single sentence. You are the named beneficiary of a trust established by Miriam Whitlock. Immediate contact is required. I read it again. And again. My fingers trembling. A trust? My grandmother, the only person who ever believed in me, had left something behind. And whatever it was, it had the power to shift everything. For the first time in weeks I felt the pulse of hope. I called the number in the email. Robert Kane's voice was calm, precise, lawyerly but not cold. Ms. Whitlock, your grandmother created a trust for you before her passing, he said. It includes assets, provisions for your writing career, and a clause regarding your right to remain in the family home. I nearly dropped the phone. The house. I whispered. They threw me out. I'm aware, Robert said carefully. That incident triggered an automatic review. They violated the terms of the trust. My knees gave out. I sat on the motel bed, dizzy. There was more, he said. She left a letter for you. Handwritten. I'll send it along with the documents. A courier arrived the next day. A thick envelope. Inside, legal papers I barely understood, and one folded page in familiar looping cursive. I opened it with trembling hands. My dearest Emery, I know how they've made you feel. I saw it long ago. That's why I built this, so you'd never have to beg for your place in this world. The house is yours. The funds are yours. Your future is yours. They cannot take that from you. Write, Emery. Write without fear. I pressed the letter to my chest and sobbed. She had known. I read her letter again, slower this time, letting each word soak into the cracks left behind by Evelyn's cruelty and Owen's betrayal. You are not broken. You are simply not what they wanted. That is their failure, not yours. Robert walked me through the trust terms over the phone later that evening. Miriam hadn't just left me a gift. She'd built an entire structure to protect me from the very people who should have done it themselves. The trust guarantees your right to occupy the family property, he explained. It also includes a financial cushion, enough to support your screenwriting career for the foreseeable future. There was a pause. Your parents and brother were notified of the trust when Miriam passed. They chose not to disclose it. I couldn't speak. They'd known. They'd locked me out anyway. They'd taken my money, my dignity, my home, while sitting on a legal document that said I never should have been touched. I stared at the walls of the motel, suddenly seeing them for what they were, not my prison but my launching point. They had erased me from their version of the story. But Miriam had written me into a different ending. One where I got to win. That night I spread the trust documents across the motel bed like pieces of a puzzle. Legal jargon filled every page. Timelines, asset breakdowns, housing rights, non-interference clauses. I highlighted everything Robert had pointed out, my hands steady for the first time in weeks. There was even a section earmarking funds for legal expenses in case the trust was challenged. Miriam had planned for war. Robert called again the next morning. There are discrepancies, he said. My stomach tightened. What kind of discrepancies? Withdrawals from the trust. Large ones. Records show over $150,000 was diverted into Whitlock and Company business expenses. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. They used my inheritance to keep their empire afloat? He hesitated. It appears so. The trustee sign-offs were unauthorized. And it involves all three: your mother, your father, your brother. My breath caught. This wasn't just betrayal. This was theft, cold and calculated. And now they were being forced to sit across from me and answer for it. The meeting was scheduled. A formal review of the trust's violations. Robert warned me, they may fight this. I folded Miriam's letter, slid it into my pocket and said the only thing that felt true. Let them try. The conference room was cold, all glass and silence. I sat on one side of the long polished table. Robert Kane stood beside me, his leather briefcase already open, documents neatly arranged in front of him. Across from us sat Evelyn, arms folded in defiance, Owen with his usual sneer, and my father, eyes fixed on the table like it might offer him a way out. It felt like court. Or war. Robert began without pleasantries. We're here to address the mismanagement of the Miriam Whitlock Trust. Evelyn scoffed. Mismanagement? This is absurd. Robert didn't flinch. The trust guarantees Emery Whitlock ownership rights to the family home and funds for her creative pursuits. Yet records show significant funds were siphoned into Whitlock and Company business accounts. Without consent. He slid forward a statement. $150,000. Used to upgrade your company's operations. Owen leaned back in his chair. We were preserving the family legacy. I leaned forward, my voice calm but sharp. You stole from me. And you knew it. He didn't respond. My father rubbed his temples. Evelyn's lips were a tight, pale line. They weren't denying it. They were just angry they'd been caught. Robert laid out the evidence like a surgeon. Precise, undeniable. Bank statements. Emails. Internal memos linking the trust funds directly to business renovations, marketing campaigns, and even a luxury retreat Owen had labeled a corporate necessity. He turned one final page toward them. This transaction was approved by Evelyn Whitlock, Owen Whitlock, and Thomas Whitlock. All without the beneficiary's consent. That is a violation of state law and the trust's protections. Evelyn's voice cracked like a whip. She doesn't deserve that money. She hasn't contributed a single thing to this family. I met her glare, unshaken. You mean your company? Not the family. Don't confuse the two. Owen slammed his hand on the table. You think you can walk in here and take everything? You're a failure, Emery. You'll waste it all chasing stories no one wants to hear. His words didn't hit like they used to. Not anymore. Robert's voice remained steady. As of now, Emery is entitled to the full balance of the remaining trust funds, ownership of the secondary property, and damages for the misappropriated amount. Silence fell like a guillotine. Their empire, so carefully curated, was crumbling and they knew it. But the worst part? They still couldn't say they were sorry. I looked at the three of them, my mother fuming, my brother practically vibrating with rage, and my father shrinking into his silence like a man watching a building collapse that he helped design. I'm not here to take what's yours, I said, voice steady. I'm here to reclaim what was always mine. Evelyn opened her mouth to protest, but I held up a hand. No. You locked me out. You stood there and watched me cry in the street. You made your choice. Owen muttered something under his breath, but I ignored him. My eyes were on my father. You could have stopped this, I said quietly. You just didn't. He looked up at me for the first time and there was something like shame in his eyes, but far too late to matter. Robert slid a pen toward me and opened the final page. Emery proposes full withdrawal from family business interests, he explained. She'll take possession of the secondary property listed in the trust, an apartment in Kingswell, and receive the remaining funds. In exchange, she will sever all financial and legal ties to the Whitlock estate. I signed without hesitation. I'm done, I said. With the business. With all of you. 2 weeks later it was official. Robert called to confirm the paperwork had gone through. The apartment in Kingswell was mine, fully paid for by the trust. The funds Miriam had protected so fiercely were finally deposited into an account with only my name on it. They had no legal grounds left to stand on, Robert said. They fought until the very end, but the law was on your side. Their signatures were scrawled on the final agreement. Forced, reluctant, cornered. I moved in the next morning. The apartment was small. One bedroom, creaky floors, a rusted balcony with a view of old brick buildings. But it was mine. No cold glares. No lectures. No locks changed behind me. Just keys in my pocket. Freedom. I unpacked slowly, carefully. Set Miriam's typewriter on a new desk I bought secondhand. Lit a candle that smelled like pine and warm earth. Tacked a quote above my writing space. You are not broken. You are simply not what they wanted. Outside, the world moved on. But inside that quiet apartment I was still. Focused. Whole. They had thrown me out. But Miriam had given me a place to begin again. I blocked their numbers the same week I moved in. First Owen. His voicemail was bitter and bruised. You think you're better than us now? You'll come crawling back. Delete. Then Evelyn, who sent a single, clinical text. We should discuss this calmly. Family doesn't end like this. She'd ended it the night she turned that lock. She just didn't like that I had survived it. Delete. My father never reached out. Not once. That silence hurt the most. For a while I kept waiting for it to sting less. It didn't. Not really. But the ache faded from a scream to a hum. Something I could live with. I filled the apartment with little things. Cheap plants from the corner market, second-hand books stacked in messy towers, thrifted curtains that caught the light just right in the mornings. I created warmth where there had been none. And I wrote. Every morning at the desk by the window, coffee in hand, I opened a fresh document and told stories of women who refused to be silenced. Who chose themselves. I wasn't writing for approval anymore. I was writing for the girl they tried to erase. And she was still here. The first time I smiled without flinching was the day I got the email. Subject. Script selected. Missoula Film Collective Talent Program. I read it 3 times, heart-hammering. My drama. About a woman who loses everything and rebuilds herself from ashes. Had been chosen for development. I laughed. Then I cried. Then I called Robert just to say thank you. You've earned every word on that page, he said simply. The program began at a small theater downtown. There I met Levi Carter, a quiet but brilliant director who saw stories in angles and light, and Tara Nguyen, a producer who walked like she already owned the future. They weren't like my family. They listened. They pushed. They believed. Your script has raw bones and a burning heart, Tara told me over coffee. It's not polished. But it's honest. Levi nodded. People crave honesty more than perfection. We started working together, exchanging drafts, arguing over dialogue, pulling late nights in diners with notebooks scattered between greasy plates. For the first time I wasn't defending my dreams, I was living them. And I wasn't alone anymore. In them I found what I'd been searching for all along. Not blood family. But chosen. Weeks turned into months and something extraordinary began to take shape. With Tara's help we secured a small grant. Levi offered to direct a short version of the script. Our test run. We scouted locations around Kingswell, casting local actors, shooting scenes along the river and in quiet alleyways where light filtered like gold through broken fences. The first day of filming I stood behind the monitor, headphones on, breath caught in my throat. There she was, my protagonist, my mirror. A woman finding her voice again after losing everything. Watching her on screen, saying the lines I had written through tears in a motel room, I felt my chest swell with something that felt like healing. It wasn't about proving anything anymore. It was about becoming who I'd always been, without permission, without apology. The short film was accepted into a regional festival. When we got the news, Levi brought over a bottle of cheap wine. Tara ordered pizza. We toasted in my tiny apartment, script pages and takeout boxes scattered everywhere. This is just the beginning, Tara said, eyes sparkling. I believed her. For once I believed in myself too. Miriam had known I'd get here. And now I had. I still think of them sometimes. Evelyn Owen, my father. A headline popped up not long ago. Whitlock and Company. Faces financial audit amid scandal. I didn't click. I didn't need the details. I already knew the truth buried beneath the numbers. They tried to silence me, erase me, shape me into something easier to swallow. But I endured. Because someone, Miriam, saw me when no one else did. She gave me a future carved from the past they tried to control. She wrote me back into my own life. And I took the pen. Now each morning begins with coffee by the window, a candle lit beside the old typewriter and a blank page waiting. My second screenplay is already taking shape, this one bigger, bolder, braver. It's about a woman who reclaims what was stolen, who learns to stop begging for space in someone else's story, and writes her own instead. As the sun sets over Kingswell, the golden light spills across my desk, touching every note, every line, every echo of her voice in my mind. You are stronger than their doubts. And finally I believe her. Because this story, it's mine. All of it.